Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get started here. I am recording, so if anyone's not able to join and wants a recording of this after the fact, we always email it out.
Right.
Yep. We're super excited. We actually have our first person coming here to our Atlanta location. Jazmin lives in Atlanta, so if anyone would like to set up a meeting with her after, we'll be sure to share her contact info. But I've actually had the pleasure of knowing Jazmin for a couple of years now, and I'm super glad she's agreed to come speak to our community today. Jazmin is the co-founder and CEO of Proximity Partners, and she's spent more than a decade as a professional recruiter, HR advisor, and a career strategy coach. Jazmin also provides tailored recruiting and human resource solutions for every business size, as well as mentors individuals to help realize their professional best. Today, she's going to be sharing insights on when and how to recruit the best people for your company. So when she's finished, feel free to kind of jump in and ask questions about, what she would recommend for whatever stage your business is at. And like I mentioned earlier, if you'd like to set up a one-on-one with her, I'm sure she'd be glad to come back and see us here. All right, take it away.
Thank you so much.
And just make sure project. Yes.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for that introduction. So what's really, really important amongst all phases of your organization or as you're growing is how to know it's time to hire, right? So before you can even recruit or source or bring on talent, you've got to know when it's time to hire. And so I'm going to touch on that. And then again, how to get the right candidates, but really it's having that wherewithal to know, okay, it's about time to hire. So let's get started. So what small businesses ask themselves a lot is it time to hire? So when I'm talking to companies, whether really they're large or small, so whether that's one person or that's our companies I'm working with and they've got 2,000 employees, some of the things that are coming up a lot, if you're asking yourself, am I busting at the seams with work, right? So that's like that migraine problem, not just a headache, right? But it's keeping you up at night. You're busting at the seams. Your team is busting at the seams. It's just overwhelming. So let's say if you're a smaller company, or we say small company, that's 200 employees or under, right? 1 to 200. You want to grow, but you need more help and you don't have any more capacity, right? There's only so many hours in a day, right? And really, I always have to say, right, I don't base my day on time management. I base it on my energy, right? And so we only have so much energy, right? Last night I said, I said, it's 10 o'clock. I can't make any more good decisions. So, right? So when you realize that you don't have any more capacity, that's also when you know it's time to hire. Another way is you need more things to get done, but you don't have that expertise. So I find that small companies, right? So let's stick with companies under 20 employees. They don't have an expertise, right? Whether that's bookkeeping, whether that's hiring, whether that could be sales, right? Which is revenue generating, which is what we need. And they don't have the expertise, but they keep trying to figure out how to make it work. The best thing that you can do is figure out a way to carve out budget for those resources. That is extremely important. And the quicker you make that a decision and you carve out that time and really making sure you carve out the time to see, okay, how can I budget that next hire and get the expertise that I need? That is when you see companies that is where I see companies just take off. And then something also, right, is my team is getting burned out. That's one of the top 5 reasons that people leave an organization is they're burnt out. They're too exhausted. They're burnt out. They don't know, and they don't always want to necessarily tell their leader that. That's something that a lot of employees you will find, they feel like their leaders need to just naturally know that, but that they won't. But you'll see when your team is exhausted or taking off days or their temperament, that means they're burnout. And it's time to hire when you want a multi-million-dollar company. If someone can name me one company that's a multi-million-dollar company with one person, please, I feel like I'm going to stop what I'm doing because you need a team, right? That is every organization. They're not successful because of their product or their service. It's the people. And so if you want to be a company that grows in revenue and that provides jobs and you're a global citizen and your company considers you've got to add people. So these are all things that that typically are migraine headaches for leaders. So here are some things, right, that I want you to think about. Like, what stops companies from hiring? So I hear this all the time. It's like, I don't have time to recruit, right? I don't have time to recruit. I don't have time to hire. And that's right. We make time for what's important. So definitely carving out that time. And I always tell my clients, right, have them make a transformation of their mind, right? And if you don't have time, you need to find someone who does. Or another issue that they have is, I don't know what position to hire next, right? So if you're growing and it's okay, do I need marketing? Do I need sales? Because that's revenue generating. But then there's that overwhelming feeling of, hey, but I need technicians, right? I need people to do the work. But if we don't have businesses that want to use us or our products or customers, they're thinking, how can I even get the work? So there are all these different pieces, right, that you have to sit and think about and say, hey, I've got to figure out who's that next hire. I hear this often too, right? Especially now, right? Post-COVID, I hear, I don't know where to find good candidates. No one wants to work right now. You know, there's all these resources that are out there. And so I don't know where to find good people. And so I want to chime in on this, right? In addition to, I always recommend getting an expert to find people or having someone in your company that's dedicated to constantly pipelining people, but also where to find good people. If you don't have that expertise, it's always good to have referrals, because when people pass on names, they're vouching. So referrals, I will also tell you that depending on what your brand is or your business, or LinkedIn, Indeed, these are all really good tools to find the candidates. And you want to always pipeline candidates, because you have to think of hiring, recruiting like a relationship, like dating, right? Great relationships don't move real fast, right? There's some cultivation, you develop that. So you're always pipelining and thinking about that next person so that when it's time, you're ready to go. But that's where to find good candidates. A lot of times, though, a lot of fear, right? If we transition is, right, a part of this hedonic treadmill, right? This circle that we are called the hamster wheel that we go in, is outsourcing is expensive. So there's a lot of creative ways to make it budget friendly. And even though you have to think, right, that there's a cost to everything. So even though you might feel like it is expensive, people are very important to a company. I would say myself, I had a client and they didn't really understand the value of people quite yet. And so they made a bad hire because they hired on their own and they had no expertise in that. And they wanted to give that person an opportunity. And so I'll kind of get to this, but the average employee generates 3 times their revenue. And that's according to the Harvard Business School, right? So, and for small businesses, right, you're talking about $100,000 to $200,000 per employee in revenue. And a lot of people don't know that either. So you have to look at it as, it's a cost maybe to bring on an expert, whether it's a third-party recruiting company or actually hiring a recruiter or an HR manager, but that cost is going to yield greater results.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So about the referrals that you mentioned,
Mhm.
like, would you say like LinkedIn is a good platform to try and like get referrals, or like, how do you find networks? Obviously, like if it's a referral that like you're mentioning it to a friend at a barbecue or something,
Right.
that's very different than like getting referrals through like a post or something like that.
Right. So I'm glad you asked. That's a fantastic question. Okay. LinkedIn is amazing, right? Like for any industry, I'm telling you, it is the Instagram of the professional world. It is amazing. There's so many things you can find out and so many ways to get connected. And that is a platform I use every single day. So even if you're not ready to hire, making connections with people, there are so many times they're like, hey, they remember Jazmin, I know this person. So you've got to think of your hiring process and your recruiting process is ongoing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Also, so for example, Leslie, she might not be someone I directly need to hire, but she will know someone else. So, and you have to keep up those relationships, right? I'll put something on my calendar like, hey, follow up with someone, or follow up with Sandy, or follow up with Sherry. And so, yes, you got to be intentional though about building that base. It's not going to just organically happen. You got to carve out time to build relationships with colleagues, and then always look, right? So someone that I hired to do my marketing strategy, I met her a year ago at Starbucks because I loved her cheetah print shoes, right? And so we kept in contact, and she's fantastic, and I hired her. So you have to think of this as like, it needs to be at the front of your mind.
Yeah.
People, which is why I highly encourage you designate someone to do that, because if you're a business owner, you know, our brains only have so much capacity. That's just the human piece of us, you know. That's just, we're mortal. So yeah, so to answer that question, LinkedIn, yep, and friends, and just watch people, colleagues, people that you spend a lot of time with, and see where their skill set lies and just some of their characteristics. If that answers your question.
It does. Like, do you think like using hashtags and stuff like that is like, LinkedIn just confuses me, as I never know like how sometimes some people see it and share it, and then other times like people that are like first connections of mine never even see a post. So like, is that, I mean, I don't know if you're like that in depth with LinkedIn, but like, do you recommend doing like hashtags or like tagging people that maybe you would like to share or something like that, like their industry or something like that?
Hashtags are really good, but I need to dig a little bit deeper. I need to scratch.
Yeah.
Okay. So are you asking, is it best to do hashtags so that you're exposed to more people? Or are you saying, is it best to do hashtags when intentionally recruiting for people?
I guess I was thinking of it more so that it gets exposed to more people. So then more people will like see it and potentially share it with their networks.
And what's it?
The job posting. If
Okay.
you have like a specific job posting that you're trying to kind of like get out there, and you know what I mean?
That's a really good question. Okay. So you're asking if someone posts a job on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like
so
if I were to like be hiring today
right.
for Saltbox or something, and I wanted to like share it with my network of people using certain, like, are there certain ways to get it to more people's eyes that are in my network? You know what I mean?
Yes. Okay. Very okay. I'm glad I clarified. Okay. So first, depending on the platform, there's a cost to post a job, which I encourage to pay that cost, but it depends on if you're going to have someone really managing that post. So yes, it's good to hashtag jobs. It's also good to put them right on your feed, because people are constantly looking at the feeds on LinkedIn. And then it's also good to post on Indeed. That's a very good tool if we're talking about we want the tool to do the work for us. And then there's another tool in LinkedIn where you can become a premium, and then you can actually reach out to people.
Yeah.
And you can also connect. And when I connect with people, there's a blurb I put in there like, hey, I've got this opportunity. I'm really impressed with your background. I've got this great opportunity. I'd love to talk to you a bit more. So,
cool. So that's more like actively recruiting someone.
Yes.
Yeah. Got it.
So, right. So, and you should always be passively recruiting. So when I say passively, again, that's that organic, hey, tell me a little bit about yourself. What do you do? But the active is being intentional. So that's when you post and then you have candidates apply. And then actively is putting in search strings, which that's, you gotta know how to do that. But you'll put in a search string in LinkedIn, and then it'll pull up people for you.
Oh,
and
cool.
You can put in the job title. You could put in the city and the state and some other skills, and then it'll pull up all those people that have that.
Interesting. Okay.
So
Thank you.
It's cumbersome and it's time consuming. You know, I want to be very clear about that, but there's really no other way around that.
Did you have a question?
Yes.
Okay.
So in the beginning, earlier on, you mentioned carving out a budget for the person. And then I liked that stat that you gave us on the fact that an employee generates 3 times their salary and revenue. So when you're looking at trying to carve out that budget, I guess, is that what you're thinking of? Is that 3 times?
Okay, so let me make sure I'm clarifying. So when you carve out the budget, you want to always be carving out the budget for that person's salary. And so, okay, so, and then is that clear?
I guess my question is, so if I'm carving out the budget for that person's salary, I'm not carving it out of what my revenue is today. I'm thinking once I get this person onboarded, they're going to bring in 3 times their salary. Or, you know, so I guess I'm just trying to balance between the two, because I can talk myself out of hiring because of what my profit line looks like right now. But at the same time, my profit line looks like that because I'm not hiring.
It's so true.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was really important, right? And I would say work with your accountants to know what are we generating? What's our recurring revenue monthly?
Mhm.
Once you know your recurring revenue, then you can start to carve out, okay, if we add this person, this is what their salary is going to be taking out, like what we're going to take out monthly.
Mhm.
So what do we need to generate? And or it depends on your preference. You have to make the decision. Do I want a loan to add this person? Do I want to wait until I reach a certain financial threshold? But you're always like forecasting when you can bring them on, but you
Mhm.
gotta first know what your revenue is every month.
Yeah.
So let's say, here, let's give an example. Your revenue is 10,000 a month, remember, right? And salaries, expenses right now are covering 8,000. You know, you have $2,000 a month to bring someone in.
Mhm.
And so that's what you base it on.
Okay, so not the potential.
No, you base it on, and again, because I believe as much as possible to organically grow.
Yeah.
Right, your company in terms of revenue, not taking out a lot of loans when you're, but again, it just depends on the company. But no, don't look at the potential because that's just gonna come.
Mhm.
Because it's gonna take someone, depending on their position, 6 months to ramp up.
Yeah,
So you just want to make sure you have the money to cover their salary for
yeah,
that time period.
yeah, because I'll talk myself out of it just based on what the numbers are today.
Yeah.
But I keep having to remind myself that the goal is to grow. The goal is to grow. So don't be afraid of making the commitment and getting that person onboarded so that you can relieve some of the pressures of what I'm doing and be able to work on the business and not in the business.
Yes.
But in order to do that, I have to commit to that, whatever that salary expense is for that person. And then, and if it makes sense, or if it's possible, put that amount of money away for 6 months of their salary or whatever, and then bring them on.
Absolutely, right? Because we always have that, right? I call it that anticipatory anxiety.
Mhm.
What if it goes wrong? But we have to start thinking, what if it goes right?
What if it goes really right?
Right?
Yeah.
Right. Our brains are always
Yes, so
scanning
true.
for trauma, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Because that's what we did, right? When they were saber-tooth tigers or bears chasing us and we're hunters and gatherers, right? But now we don't have that, but we're always still, it's a mental shift we have to make. Not what if it goes wrong, but what if it goes right?
Mhm,
And then there's some planning,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
We don't want to be reckless and just say, oh, you know, we don't have the money for their salary and hire them. But like you said, put it away and say, okay, I've got 3 months of their salary. I've got 6 months of their salary. Let's
Mhm.
make that happen.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And then I guess that last part of the circle, right, is I will get around to hiring, right? It's the procrastination. I'll get around to it. I'll get around to it. I get around to it. But you have to think about the money that you're missing out on from growing, right? Because adding people, the right people, that's super important. That is what helps the company grow. So I always say, why do you need to hire now, right? So to kind of go across, like we said, that 100 to 200K revenue per employee, right? Once you've gotten out of that you're training them, they're understanding, that is how much the average company is going to make per employee. And that's like a small to medium-sized company. And then, right, we want to prevent team burnout. We want to have a great culture. We want to create, want to keep our morale, right? We want to build team morale. And so that's why we also need to hire down. And also, if you see, right, 10 employees per a million, right? So typically $6 million companies, $5 to $6 million, they've got about 50 employees. So that's a really safe number to use when you want to say, okay, hey, if I'm at $1 million company, I probably got 10 employees. And again, give or take depending on salaries, but that's how I want you to start thinking about the importance of hiring, because people add revenue, because people free up time for you to do other things. Remember that our revenue generating, and it's just so important to understand the value of people and to get over that hurdle of being afraid of what if this happens. So what do we do next, right? We've determined, okay, I'm going to hire. You've mentally put that in your mind, which could have taken a few months or a few weeks. And so you first have to determine with your leadership, with yourself, and I always recommend getting counsel, determine what's the next most valuable hire, right? Depending on your industry, your company, and get counsel. Get counsel, ask other leaders in your organization, ask an expert, what do I need next? Because when you're a smaller organization, every hire counts.
Mhm.
I mean, every hire is so pivotal to the morale, and also just to, again, to you generating revenue or not. Then you want to be clear about the job description and the personality that comes with the position. It is not just the technical skills, it's the soft skills. Positions have certain personalities, right? So we want to be clear. And also, which I didn't mention, but you want to be really clear about what your culture is. If you haven't yet established a culture in your organization, now's the time to do it. We don't want to keep adding people if we don't know our culture, because then we can add someone who doesn't fit that culture. And if you notice, the most successful companies have a very clear outline culture, and their employees, they know that. So get clear about the job description, the personality that goes with that position, and make sure you understand your culture and your vision of who's going to fit into that. Then you can post the positions on job boards, because you want to start getting a funnel of people that are applying, and that also builds confidence once you see. Now, don't get overwhelmed, right? I hear a lot of people say it's cumbersome, it's too many people, which is why I recommend having one person dedicated to that. But you're going to get an influx, especially now that COVID is somewhat settling down. There are a lot of people looking for job opportunities because they've had time to reflect on their lives, and they understand how fragile life is, and they just want to make sure they're doing something that encompasses them and their values and what they want to do long term.
Mhm.
And then you just recruit and interview candidates. I really say have that interview process clearly outlined, because great people leave the market quickly. So if you don't have a streamlined interview process, right, where it's like, okay, we're going to bring them in, interview them, we're going to let them know in 48 hours, then we're going to extend an offer in a week, people leave the market so quickly. I have seen it happen so many times, and that can be frustrating and discouraging. So just make sure you're clear about your interview process and how that's going to be streamlined. Also, from a compliance perspective, the interview process has to be the same for every candidate, and that can be considered discrimination. A lot of small businesses don't know that. Larger, I've run into larger companies, they don't realize that, right? You have to interview everyone the same way. And so that's from a compliance standpoint. And as I put at the bottom, if you need support with recruiting and a hiring process, reach out to a company where they're experts, where you're being compliant, they're helping you establish an HR infrastructure, because once you have this process in place, it can just be replicated. Before I have any questions, I just want you all to have access to my contact information, right? I offer a complimentary session, what I call a complimentary HR strategy session, where we can just talk through what are your struggles, or what are you doing great, and how do you want to keep growing, and just everything around hiring. I have such a passion, I enjoy it. So please see my contact information and go to my website and see what I do. If any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me.
And I'll share these too with our community in Slack. Thank you so much. So I have a couple of questions, but I want to see if anyone else wanted to jump in.
Okay.
Did you have anything else?
No.
Okay. Anyone else on the call have any questions for Jazmin? Alrighty. So, like when you talked about trying to figure out like what the next best hire is, do you have any like tips and tricks, or are there any like, I don't know, I was going to say like charts or something that you can put together to try and like weigh like what things you should be thinking about at each various stage? Like, a lot of our companies here are like Angela, for example, like one person doing it all. And like, she could probably have like 2 or 3 more people come in to help her, to be honest, but like trying to figure out that next best hire. Like, are there tips and tricks for pinpointing really where like the pain point is, and like, what is like the priority at that time? Do you know what I mean? I know that's probably hard without knowing each individual company, but
I always say, so there's like I always like to say almost like a start, right? I always recommend a revenue generator. That is, right? So you want somebody that's going to bring in customers or companies. So when I think about like the first couple of hires, that's a revenue generator. So that could be a salesperson, a business development, somebody that's cultivating relationships. And then, because typically in most companies, the owner or CEO is like the technician, they can do the work.
Yeah.
but you always need someone pipelining, whether that, so that could be marketing and strategy too, right? Like
Right.
if you have consumers that are buying essential items, whether that's clothes or food or, you can always add a technician, but you always still need somebody who has a vision of how do we grow and how do we grow consistently. So I would say marketing and sales is that next major hire.
Mhm.
In terms of a chart, no, I would say, unfortunately, you've got to, it's.
I don't know why I
business.
said chart.
That's
I was just trying to
okay,
think of
that's
like
okay.
a matrix
Like
or
a
like
system,
a,
yeah.
if this,
Yeah.
then this, or
Yeah.
like,
Right, so, okay, so if you've got a ton of business flowing in.
Yeah.
And you don't have the capacity, then you hire what I call a technician, somebody who can actually deliver and do the work.
yeah,
So if that's a warehouse, you need fulfillment. people,
yeah.
Right, so if you've got companies and you need fulfillment.
Which is great because we actually are providing that service here, which can
Yes.
free up. I mean, Angela's seen it can free you up to work more on your business. So the way you describe that's actually really fascinating. And it sounds such common sense, like a revenue generator. So then you can have more growth and then you can spend more time with that money growing the business. And
Yes.
yeah, so that's cool. I didn't know if you had more to add, but
No,
yeah.
yes, I was gonna say, once you have a revenue generator, then you can add more technicians, and you need an accountant or someone who is financial, so they can forecast for you.
Mhm.
And they can also give you tips on, taxes and, hey, this is how we're trending, or hey, last month we made the most money here.
Mhm.
So now this is where we should shift our focus. So I say a revenue generator, a marketing person, an accountant, those are staples that you need to have. And then you can build out, hey, I might need someone that's administrative, and then you just keep building out.
Mhm.
But it just depends on where you're starting and what's working and what's not working. And that kind of takes some diagnosing on the ground level and company by company.
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead.
Okay, so I always find it interesting that, we would just talked about, I could use 2 more people, I could always use 2 more people. But what I found is that I constantly say, oh, I don't have a team yet. I don't have a team yet. But the reality is I'm contracting a lot. So I contract my CPA, I contract my marketing director, I contract my fulfillment team. So I'm contracting a lot. What is the, I guess so for me, I have a very short up team in terms of the professionals are doing the professional work. But at some point I do need to balance that with actual employees, W2 employees. So I'm trying to make sure that I know when to transition from. So I think that's a great conversation on when to hire, but when do you transition to building an in-house team versus contracting?
I'm so glad you asked. Okay, so I have a couple clarifying questions. What made you decide to contract all those positions?
Because I didn't have enough full-time work for a person.
Okay, okay.
And I wanted somebody that was high level of skill, but not a full-time person.
Okay. So do you feel like you want a full-time person now? First off, not feel, but factually, do you have enough hours for people to be brought in full-time?
Full-time, I feel like I could, if the position was a kind of a flex position. So did fulfillment, did customer service, did social media, stuff. So it would have to be somebody that kind of could flex throughout the company.
Okay, so a couple things I have. So there's a couple of positions where it takes a very specific skill set. Like when I think of social media, that personality and that skill set typically, now this is not all the time, it doesn't necessarily do with fulfillment. So what happens is you have someone that could be doing a really great job at something else, but they're getting pulled. So there are certain positions I say, no, keep that, like have that person exclusively do that.
Right.
That's marketing, that's social media, that's sales. Now we get into fulfillment, maybe that person can kind of help with customer service or so would you say, with that being said, do you think that you have full-time yet? Or what maybe with one of those?
I honestly feel like I don't have full-time yet, but it's because I've been doing a lot of work in the business. And once I get somebody there, I can work on the business and then I'll start to scale the way I need to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you set a vision for your company? Do you want to stay a company, or not stay because I don't know your size? How many contractors do you have right now?
I think I'm rocking about 8.
Oh, wow, okay.
Uh-huh.
How large of a company do you want to have? When you think about your vision, do you want a company that's 2,000, 3,000, 100, 10, 5?
People. I think I want to get to 50 people
Okay,
quickly. And then, like, not when I say quickly, in the next couple of years, and then look at where it goes from there, because I may be looking for an exit strategy at that
I
point.
see. Okay.
So,
And I asked about your vision, right? Because if, let's say you were a company that wanted to stay agile,
Mhm.
you wanted to stay small in the core, then keep contractors. But it sounds like you want a company. So the quicker you can bring people on, the better. And I'm gonna tell you why, because you're creating a few things. One, you're starting to establish a culture.
Mhm.
Two, I will tell you, it's not that contractors they do great work. I've used contractors, but it's nothing like someone that's totally
Yeah,
committed
bought
to your
in and-
company.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's that the problem that I'm having is exactly what you talked about. You can't just push all of those responsibilities into one person, and expect for them to do it all well. So I'm trying to maintain a high level of expectation without paying a person to do it.
Yeah, no,
Paying
that's
one person,
fair,
so, yeah.
that's
I mean,
fair.
I pay a lot of money for
No,
these contractors,
right.
but.
Yeah.
And here's the thing too, right, which a lot of smaller companies don't know. So would you say you understand the difference between, even the difference between a 1099 and a W-2,
Mhm.
right? So you have more, and I don't necessarily, this is kind of a dirty word, but you have more control.
Mhm.
So over a W-2 employee, because they work for your company.
Yeah.
So you
definitely.
can require them to work certain hours, if they have to wear a uniform. From a compliance and legal, you cannot do that with a 1099
Mhm.
contractor.
Mhm.
They are only paid on deliverables.
Mhm.
So if there's meetings that you want in the middle of the day, or you can't require that of them. So it's just, you start to create a culture
Yeah,
and a real,
Yeah.
once you have a W-2 employee.
yeah.
Mhm.
And that culture piece is a big deal, because
That's
I
what
do
helps
have core
companies grow.
values that I want the company to
Mhm.
exude, not just in the workspace, but to the
Mhm.
community. I want people to
Yes.
have an understanding that there's a culture and there's this, core values that we withhold, and I can't put that on a contractor.
Right.
Yeah.
And I love contractors, right? Especially, right, project-based work.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Very important. But if you're talking about long-term, the quicker you can bring people into the organization,
Mhm.
the better, because they'll have more passion, they'll be dedicated. And then, like I said, you're starting to build out that vision.
Right. Okay.
Makes sense.
Okay, that's really helpful.
Yeah, thank you. You're welcome.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Laura?
Any other questions? All right. I think that wraps it up. So, yeah, always. So just thanks for everybody who attended. And like I said, we recorded this session, and I'll be sharing out Jazmin's information. She'll also be around if you're in Atlanta and want to stop by and see her. She'll be here for the next like 15 minutes or so. And thank you again so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Beautiful and lovely as always.
Thank you.
And we'll see y'all next week. If anyone else is planning to join next week, I would love for you to, because we're actually going to have our whole Saltbox team on, and I want everyone to bring their Q&A, all things from what you want to see more out of this series. We're going to start the next one in May, all the way through like future vision for Saltbox, new locations, all that jazz. So it'll be a fun one. Not that they aren't all fun, but anyway. All right. Have a great afternoon, y'all.
Thank you.
See you later.